Hello, welcome to this round table dedicated to digital agenda, European digital agenda, and the digital divide. These two topics are two different faces of the same argument. The digital agenda is an important proposition of European Commission. Digital divide is one of the problems that could be resolved just by digital agenda. Let me say a few words about the context, and after that I want to present our hosts. Let me say that after many centuries of European culture domination around the world, from Colombo probably, we had the European culture able to orientate the world in terms of science, technology, institutions, commerce, finance, and so on. That very important historical segment finished probably, and digital agenda is collocated within this process, very important process. And the project launched by Commissioner Neelie Kroes means just that the decline, the risk of decline for Europe may be resolved with a very important process able to involve all the European countries with a perspective of information society. And this is the context in which digital agenda is collocated. So we will speak about this with all these very distinguished persons, and I should like to. Our exchange of opinion will be very informal. We have no slides at all, so I will solicit our friends to express their opinion about the topics we will manage in our round table, and I would like to solicit you to participate with questions if you desire to do it. So we will have some loop of intervention, of contribution, and after that I will solicit you to participate to our exchange of opinion. I would like to start with Roberto Saracco. People involved in the previous panel know already Roberto Saracco, which is the head of the future center of Telecom Italia, located in one of the best buildings in Venice, the San Salvador Center. And Roberto is a man of the future, is a vision. He has a vision of the future. So let me ask Roberto a first question that could orientate all of us in evaluating this problem. Digital agenda is a very important challenge topic. There are supporters of digital agenda, and there are enemies. I'm not speaking just about people, but about circumstance. There are difficulties that obstacle digital agenda, and there are many good reasons for what we have to realize it. Which is your opinion, and how we may afford the first aspect and the second aspect?
Thank you. Well, I guess that the digital agenda, as you were saying, is a very important area, because basically it's spanned throughout all of our world. The way we're doing things today, production, delivery, customer care, the way we access services as citizens, the way the government are interfacing with citizens and so on. And it's something that changes things. And as you can expect, in every situation where you are changing things, you will have people that are favoring or favored by these changes, and they will be supporting. And others, they are seeing this kind of thing menacing, as a menacing thing. So just think about when we started to move the tickets for the airplanes into digital form, and we start to buy through Expedia or other means and so on. Well, all the travel agencies didn't like that. And it's quite understandable. Now, the magic of digital is the fact that you can duplicate bits at a very, very low cost, basically for nothing. And immediately, you are enabling a market that is a global market, because there's no cost in distance, there's no cost in duplication of things. The transaction costs are going down. And our world, since Adam Smith, I would say, that in a way captured this kind of thing, has been based on high transaction cost. Most of our companies or our business processes and so on are based on the idea that you have high transaction cost. And by managing this transaction cost, I'm in business. But if these transaction costs are very low and are getting lower and lower and lower, there's no space for people doing this kind of intermediation. Even what we have, the IVA, we call it in Italy, Imposta sul Valore Aggiunto, okay? the added value taxes, is based on this concept that everyone in the value chain is adding something, and so is adding value and something like that. But once you don't have any value added, then you lose the space for these kind of things. And what we are seeing is a complete disintermediation. And the digital agenda is about recognizing basically this kind of thing. It's saying, okay, in the future, we are going to have, most of the things is going to be digital. There's no cost in sending things. And the margins that you can attach to this kind of thing are razor thin. But if the margins are razor thin, and still you need to invest a lot of money in order to create this infrastructure, something like that, it means that you need to have much more volume managed. And therefore, how can we sustain 167 or whatever they are mobile operators in Europe with this razor-thin margin? 2015, all roaming will disappear from a tariffing point of view. And you can buy a SIM card in Latvia and use it here in Palermo, and paying exactly the same thing that you're paying in Latvia. So that's going to be great for the customer. And so I'm coming to your point. Customers are going to love this kind of thing. At the same time, operators are going to see a tremendous expansion of competition, which will drive the margins down, the income down, and of course they are opposing this kind of thing. And they are opposing this kind of thing also for a very good reason, that in the end are the same reason that should make customer concerned about this. Because if companies go out of business, okay, then who's going to build the infrastructure? We are assuming that we're going to have a full network, optical network, many thousands of base stations. We have today in Italy some 15,000 in Telecom Italia. But if we want to provide 2 megabits, I'm not talking about 24 or 48 megabits per second, 2 megabits to every customer using a cell phone, we'll need about 90,000 base stations, 6 times as much. Who's going to give the money for this kind of thing? So I think it's not a problem of dividing in enemies and supporters, but the fact that we are in a process of change, and this process of change will change our structure.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Good first approach to help us to get the right direction. I want to invite Millie Banerjee. Just a few minutes before we considered together with Millie the fact that some manager from industry leave the industry and goes to work for regulatory bodies in several countries. And she said, yes, this is a good thing, because in this way, when you go to work for a regulatory body, you know exactly which are the needs of the industry, which are the problems of the industry. But the point is that Millie worked for 25 years for British Telecom and for 9 years for the Ofcom, which is the regulatory body of United Kingdom. So in this case, you are a good synthesis of 2 points of view, the crucial point of view, the regulatory bodies and the network operators. So which are these 2 different points of view related to the future of digital agenda launched by Neelie Kroes?
If I can just support the earlier speaker and say we're all very enthused by the digital agenda. I think it is important that there is this strategic approach across Europe, because it's clear from everything that we see that Europe has the potential to fall very badly behind. Although, of course, in the last 2 years the economic situation has changed somewhat, and you will see that Japan and Korea and the United States are not investing as they were investing 5 years ago in the communication services. That said, however, there are a number of really big challenges, as the digital agenda proposal itself points out. But the chair has asked me to make comments about the regulatory point and the network infrastructure point. Let me first talk about the network operators. Just building on what Mr. Saracco said, the real difficulty that the network operators have at the moment is they cannot alight on an appropriate business model. What is the business model for the new world? And if you think about it, we have been here in the future, but not quite in this comprehensive way. When I was very young, I used to manage the private circuit business in BT. And I could see no reason whatsoever for BT to invest in broadband. Why on earth would you do that? It would destroy my business. And indeed, that is exactly what happened. It destroyed my business. But it required a very concerted effort from the politicians and the strategic effort from BT itself to say this is the new way we would go. So now we still have those problems, is what is the business model? Where in the network do we as network operators make money? Particularly bearing in mind the huge amount of investment that that network operators need to make. And how do regulators fit in? Well, regulators have a very difficult task because regulators like Ofcom operate in a very strong market economy. There is very little room for investing in the public good because the belief in principle is that the companies will invest to benefit themselves and benefit their consumers short-term and long-term. And that is how the regulatory models are built. So it is very difficult for regulators to find a way forward. And as you will see, a number of regulators have taken the first step, including Ofcom, which is saying that we will effectively give a regulatory holiday to the incumbent so long as they invest. Now, that's right, and in the UK, BT are investing, but will it be right in the future? How will the regulators change that environment? How will they make sure that once that infrastructure network is built, right down to the cabinet, that there will be the capability to interconnect at every level of the network? It is not at all clear to us as regulators that that is going to happen easily. And as you all know, once the network has been designed, it has been designed, and it's going to be very difficult at that point to find the right economic leverage points to enable companies who did not invest in the first instance because they were unable to or unlikely to come in and invest there. So what on earth are going to be the business models? It's very interesting, the previous presentation here talked about the different layers of the network. And I've been in the business for 30 years, and I don't think we've quite resolved how these different layers would interconnect with each other than within one network silo. It's all right if you as an operator build the whole network, but if you want to allow people, enable people to interact with various layers of the network, what is the currency that you use to build that commercial environment? I think we now know as network operators how to build a technical environment, but we have no idea what is the currency to build that commercial environment. And that I think that makes our life very difficult, both as a regulator and an infrastructure network provider.
We have two representatives of telecommunication operators with different characteristics. I want to pass the microphone to Panos Exarchos. Panos Exarchos is a manager of OTE, which is the main TLC operators in Greece, and Panos is involved especially in the mobile area, and OTE is an operator, a quadruplay operator, offering mobile, internet, fixed and IPTV. I would like to know which is the state of the engagement of your company in the situation in Greece, which are the main problem, and also taking account that the transition between the old networks and the new networks will pose a lot of problems. And for example, if I am looking at the fiber, the first question is how will you link all the aisles you have in your country, and how you solicitate the public to be involved in a project for a next generation network?
We strongly believe that the growth of our country, for whole Europe, will come from the development of ICT technologies. The digital divide between poor and rich countries will come with this development. For this reason, in our country, Greece, where OTE is the incumbent, although we have a big economical crisis, we try to development the NGA networks. Now we can adopt the hybrid model of fiber to the cabinet, not fiber to the home. We believe that until 2020, all the citizens of our country will have speeds up to 30 megabps, and half of them up to 100 megabps. It's really that the citizens cannot afford much money for big speeds. So we want to have fiber until the cabinet, and next use VDSL modem. But it's really that we have some problems with the regulator, and maybe we will be considering our strategy. Until now, we have VDSL to 13 towns in Greece, and the anticipation of fiber to the home and fiber to the building, a GPON for later. And we are upgrading our backbone with DWDM and IPTV services. So now we have fixed telephone, mobile, internet, and IPTV. In fact, the geographical of Greece is difficult. We have many mountains and many islands. We try to connect them, all of them, or not all of them, some of them with fiber or underwater or with other systems, especially radio systems, such as microwave or Wi-Fi. And we believe that we will manage to reduce the digital divide, which is our challenge in my Greece. Thank you.
I would like to ask the point of view of our Fulvio Margherita, which represents H3G, the company which manages the brand 3 Italia. Your company is a mobile company. You offer just a mobile service, and your company is important in the Italian market. Just before, Panos said us the mix of solutions to cover the country with difficulties in terms of orographic structure of the country. You are operating only on the mobile ground, but the point is that for years we debated about fiber, just giving sense to the NGN in terms of fiber. Now we know that the solution is a mix of technologies, fiber, wireless, and probably Wi-Fi, which will be able to offer solution at several hundreds of mega, and satellite to afford the digital divide too. Which is the point of view of a mobile company like you?
So when we think about digital divide, we often think in terms of hundreds of millions of euros. And this, of course, stops any initiative. But there are things that can be done also with much less money. And so I would just point some of these, which happens in my working days. Of course, in our case, we are a mobile operator. We have just to connect our node B to the backbone, and we have, as all the other operators which experience this growth in mobile broadband, we have this backhauling problem. Since from 2006, we were still based on E1 backhauling. I mean, yes, ATM E1 backhauling. So, of course, the main solution is fiber. But fiber is costly. In our country, fiber is not so developed and spread. So, one simple solution could be, of course, to increase the usage of microwave equipment. But there is still some problem in using them. All you know that in order to use microwave systems, we need some hub high in the mountains to connect all the node B. And typically these hubs in the mountains are based on TV installation. Typically they are temporary sites. And when I say temporary, I say that they need a renewal of the permit any year. Of course, we want to use this hub in order to have the possibility to connect all our antennas. But do we want to afford the cost of hundreds of thousands of euros to bring the fiber to a hub which next year could be dismissed? That's not a secure investment. One solution could be, for example, to regulate, but make it easier to cover all nations with sites collocated for all the operators that can allow operators to have a capillary network to connect all node B. And this, I would say, is easy to manage and not so costly. And once we have this, well, the operator could be happy to invest in order to bring capacity on them. And of course, we need also that the regulatory helps us, for example, freeing some frequency resources for high capacity link. You know that microwave links use this multiple of 7 megahertz channel bandwidth. And typically with 56 megahertz bandwidth, you can carry 155 megabits per second, which seems a lot of capacity. But when you have to connect many antennas, each of them with many cells, and each cell is able to do tens of megabits per second, well, it's not so huge a capacity. And 56 megahertz channels are very difficult to find because, especially in crowded area, they are finished. So one possibility is just to free them up from band used by military. Of course, this is an area where the government can make money because, of course, the operators pay for that. So I see some opportunities that, of course, does not involve thousands of millions of euros, but very few investments, and that allows us to give a better quality of service.
No, you are engaged in one of the very crucial aspects of digital agenda, and it could be very interesting to offer this point of view about how the public is involved in this engagement in Italy, and with which timetable for the next future. Thank you.
So the action plan for the digital agenda have two important items that are governed by Minister of Economical Development. First of all is digital divide. The second role is the NGN networks for 2020. At the first problem of digital divide, as we hear in this conversation about the operator, we know that is a problem of market failure. In more areas of our country, but it's similar to the other country of the Europe, it's not convenient for the operator to invest in these areas because don't have forecast of return of the investment in a short time. So for this reason, I think that not be in a short time a technology solution in order to solve the problem of digital divide, because all the investment are necessary for this problem are infrastructure investment in terms of duct, in terms of fiber optic links, in terms of towers for radio link. We estimate that to solve the problem in Italy, we need 1 billion euros, and more part of this investment are just managed by Infratel Italia that solve the problem in more than 1,000 of cities in Italy. We are more or less on 40% of our national plan. As you know, the problem of the infrastructure invest also the access technology in terms of ADSL links, but also for mobile links. Many customers in Italy are connected by mobile phones, so what we expect in the next future is that our infrastructure could be used by the mobile operator in order to exchange, in order to open the network, to offer in these areas a fixed connection and mobile connection. Our strategy is very simple. In order to solve this problem, we use fiber optic connection between the high backbone networking and the little countries that are not connecting fiber optic link. These fiber optic connections are useful for the old operator that could be used only a fiber optic, 2 fiber optic, 3 fiber optic, so they can pay a little part of the investment that is managed by the public role. At the moment, as you say, we are on the 40% of our project. Some figures that could be very interesting to know is in 3 years ago, when we launched our program, the digital divide in Italia was 15% of the people. At the moment, we are talking about 7% of people are in digital divide in Italy. Thank you very much.
This is now the turn of Professor Busacca, which is professor in several universities and he specialized in optics studies. So you are a man in face of networks, the problems which are linked to networks, and one of the aspects of the diffusion of networks is just the way in which people will use them. So the digital divide is the main focus in this case. How we may afford this problem, the resistance to, or if I may say this in a different way, pull or push, offer or demand, people asking or industry offering, which is the contradiction or the synergy between these two different forces? Thank you.
I mean, as a professor of photonics, how would I have a network transporting terabits? But do we really need it? I mean, I think your question is, do we really need a network which gives 100 megabit per person? Probably not. Probably digital divide is a problem of big companies and not a problem of persons. Italy is a country of old people, and it will be even older in 10 years. Then what I'm going to ask you is, these people will be able to use the network. Do they need really internet services? And then the second question is, probably, if you want to give services and if you want to give velocity to your network, this produces, of course, a pill, give money to the market. But is it probably better to switch off the paper, to switch off the money, as we did in digital for the digital TV? it's probably better you ask persons to convert, not abruptly, but in few years, to digital transmission. This is my point. 2 million people in Italy do not use internet. It's a lot of persons. But do they ask to use internet? No. Probably don't need it. But if we force them to use it with a switch off, probably all the network capabilities will grow. Probably the old companies which does infrastructure will have person which will use it. It's a social problem, and it's a cultural problem. And if it is a social and cultural problem, the community should solve this problem. And this is the role of Infratel in Italy, I suppose. Then, well, we have a really nice example in Italy. It regards renewable energy. In renewable energy, our government asked to all people to pay in their bill a percentage to invest in photovoltaics and wind energy. Then, if it's a social problem, probably a solution may be similar to the one we found in renewable energy. This may be a solution, but we have a new example. We have the example of Lombardy, where the president of Lombardy, Formigoni, asked to the region to pay half of the network, and the other half was of the operators, Telecom in particular. This is a really nice example because it's a public investment, half with a private, half and half with private investment. And also in Trento,
yes, but we have to say that in Lombardia that project needs a real business model which is not available still. And this is a real problem. We have always a problem of money and the problem of business model, of course. Who pay for what? That's the point.
What I found is that big operators, I mean, in this table, they always say it's a problem of money, it's a problem of a billion, 2 billion euros just in Italy. And the problem of the big operators is who pays for it. But I found also that small operators, in particular in Italy, and they are hundreds of thousands of operators, they don't have the same problem. They just call small companies, and they are able to solve problems of digital divide in the island, and they have a market. Then, is it a real problem? Is it a real problem? My question is the digital divide for big companies, or they are looking just on public investments to solve the problem of digital divide? Maybe they should invest with public investment. Maybe this is a solution. Maybe they should ask to small operators to share the market with them. Maybe this is another solution. And this is a point of view of just a professor. Of course, I'm not a marketing professor. I'm a professor in photonics and electromagnetic fields. But this is a point of view of a user of the network, and a network which I would have terabit per second in fiber optics or free space optics, but I found very far in my agenda, and probably in the European digital agenda too close.
It's very interesting because in Italy we have only the half of the connection of DSL lines connected by broadband. So this means that one people in two is not connected in DSL. So what does it mean? That we need to force the people to use broadband. Maybe on the public administration it could be the first phase in order to force this passage to the digital agenda. So, as for example, it's anachronistical at the moment that many people do the queue at the post office to pay the energy power count. So it's very important to force the people to use connection. In this way, all the operators could have the money to put more investment, and maybe could change our organization of the public administration. Okay.
Thank you very much, because this is exactly my point. We should switch off. That's what I'm saying. Same example of digital TV. Maybe you don't know we have really strong interest in TV in Italy, at least for the next few months. And then they found this solution in for the digital TV. Maybe we can find a solution similar, which is really nice to solve the problem for telecom, which is, I think, even more interesting also for TV.
The switch-off solution was chosen because European Union needed to have frequencies free. So the only way in which you may get frequencies was just to get them from television, and that was the project of digital television in Europe. And this is very important to underline this. And you know, I want just to, Millie, I want to ask you. Before Roberto said, make an important reference to the concept of unique market, and this is the main scope of digital agenda. The question I want to pose to you, because you have an experience from the point of view of the industry and experience from the point of view of the regulator, may we consider that probably the future for next generation network is linked to the way in which we may find solutions with less stringent rules for the market? Could it be an option, in your opinion?
I think theoretically, of course, it can be an option. But let's consider what might be the barriers. I think part of the barriers is to do with how the individual sectors within the ICT have developed and what their business models are. So if you look at the content businesses, they have developed very differently. They value their businesses very differently. And the content businesses are very closely linked with ownership of the content and are very closely linked with the cultural perspective of that individual country. So it has been very difficult for content businesses, and if you look at something like Sky, which has content business across the whole of Europe, but actually they operate under rules which are very specific to each of those countries. And I think it has been very difficult to merge those rules. What is more easy is to merge the rules around competition. It is more easy and we have got a European competition framework. And there have been a number of mergers and a number of developments across Europe where the rules are one and have been reduced. But I will also put to you that, as somebody earlier said, we are in a global world. And if you looked at yesterday's news, that the AT&T and T-Mobile merger has been refused. So how about rules here in Europe where we can make it happen, but rules in the US where it is not going to happen? And why is it not going to happen? It is said that it's not going to happen because that will diminish competition in the USA. But remember, these are both global businesses. And it's a very confusing world, isn't it, don't you think? So I think on the competition side, we could move towards a unique market, and I think we've done so. But in terms of applications, particularly on the content side, I find it more difficult. Can I just make a quick comment about why do we need all these millions of megabits? And I do have a lot of sympathy for what you said. I don't think we do. But you said something about public development. One of the areas where I feel very disappointed that there hasn't been development, and it would have to be global, is the area of health. Because if you look at it, nowhere in the world has the health economy made efforts to move into the digital environment. Technically and practically, there is no reason why every hospital is not connected to every other hospital by broadband. No reason why the GP surgeries are not connected to each other by broadband. No reason why broadband is not used to monitor the health of individual citizens. No reason why X-rays are not transmitted by broadband. No reason why remote diagnostics are not done. But it hasn't happened. It hasn't even happened in Korea. It hasn't happened in Japan. Why do you think that is? That is because there is a sector, which is the medical sector, whose business model is very different. And that is not, and therefore, it is going to be, unless the states can persuade or force people down this road, it is not going to happen. And it's amazing, isn't it? Because most of the European health sector is owned by the state. It is paid for by the state. But the state is not willing to address that segment of the community to bring that together. And it's very worrying, isn't it? That education and health are two areas where we could really move forward and make progress.
I want to ask to the audience if there is some question. Please, could you come here, please?
To me, digital agenda and digital divide sounds like a political, almost communistic paradigm, which is very strange for Mrs. Nelly Cruz, because I know her as a very liberal person. So my real question is, what's the problem and whose problem is it?
Maybe you live in a country and you need the connection is available by the operator, but in Italy, I imagine in other country, there are 4 million of people in Italy that are not able to connect to internet. This is not a communistic problem or liberalistic problem. This is a consequence of economical development of this market, because this market by 1997 is driven by commercial and economical aspect, respect the telephone license that are obliged to use to connect all the people in all the country of Italy. So the consequence is that the economical liberalization as a consequence the market failure. Market failure is create digital divide, area in which the operator don't invest directly because don't have convenience to invest. So you have to correct this aspect. As you correct, you can create incentive to operator to go directly to invest a part of the money of the operator in these areas, or invest directly. There are only these two models.
If you're assuming a market failure, you assume also there is a demand. Otherwise, there is no market failure. And have you checked the demand?
Demand is very poor, and the investment is very high. So we have to reduce these two, to equilibrate these two levels.
I think, first of all, whose problem is it? I think it's a problem of the West. And what is the problem? I think the West, the Western countries, I think the problem is there is a strategic view, and I agree with it, that we in the West have come to a plateau in terms of our ability to generate more wealth in a sustainable way. And there is a concern that we will be overtaken by these enormous, powerful economies which are very young and appear to have the ability and the will to invest in the long term, which use a different paradigm, financial paradigm that we do in the West. And it's a feeling that if we don't do that, then we don't energize the citizens of Europe and the US to create more wealth and create a sustainable environment. And it is a philosophical point, I think, Wim. And if you don't believe that, then I think there is no need. We can just progress incrementally. But if you believe in the philosophy that we would have to take a big step forward, then I think this is one of the areas of infrastructure and application investment that has to happen, and has to happen very quickly. Because if I can just say already, it matters not whether you and I buy Vodafone, what matters is whether the Chinese are buying Vodafone services or they're buying the Samsung handsets, because the price of that is being determined already by China and India. So we're already in that situation, and I think it's a philosophical point that we either accept or we don't.
What appears is that digital agenda is a problem mainly of competition, linked to the problem of the unique market. There is a problem of welfare, as you profiled, a very original point of view, important point of view. There is a problem of bandwidth. Do we need really this bandwidth? Let me say that if we consider Europe and the other region of the world, we have two different countries like China and India for different reasons, because India is a democratic parliamentary country, China is a communist country. In China there are only three main operators. In India there are something more. In Europe we have almost 200 different operators competing in very small marginal national markets. May we in the future imagine ourselves having a competitive Europe with this fragmentation and other regions of the world operating with different rules? Roberto, which is your opinion about this?
I tend to agree with her, saying that it's more a philosophical issue than actual. And I think that the problem in bandwidth, at least in the digital divide, at least in Italy, is a problem on the demand side, it's not on the offer side. I can tell you that Telecom Italia is willing, and we do it every single day, to bring broadband to those communities that have at least 20 people wanting to subscribe. And it's very difficult in those areas to find 20 people wanting to subscribe. You can have broadband everywhere in Italy, even on the peak of the mountain, using wireless. And this is true. So if you really feel the need for having broadband, you may be spending more, but you can have it. And you can have it via satellite and other things. The point is that most of these people that do not want to have, that have not subscribed to broadband, is that because they don't feel they need it, starting from my mother. I tried to convince her many times over that it would be nice to see her granddaughter using, Facebook or something like that, but she doesn't understand it, and she doesn't want it, and there are many like her. I personally, but this again is a philosophical position, I don't think that the way is to force people to switch off, as the other people were saying. I mean, we are not forcing people to use highway. We still let them using normal rural roads, okay, if they want to, even though we have highway. However, I think that we need, as Europe, to realize at the political level, at the high level, because you cannot involve all people and wait that the majority is agreeing with you. As a political level, you must have a goal, you must have a dream, and that goal should be that in the future, competitiveness goes through digital infrastructure. And you've got to provide this digital infrastructure, in spite of the fact that many people today do not feel the need for it. And there are many ways for doing this kind of thing, and there's a lot of discussion whether one is better than the other, okay? But I think that politically speaking, as you were saying, okay, we need as Europe to see ourselves as a common market. Why do we need to see ourselves as a common market, since we have been talking for many years, and also today, the fact that the world is a global one? Why do we want to have a Europe if we have a global world, okay? Wouldn't make sense. But I think that Europe has some specific things that can bring to the fore. We have mentioned that well-being of people. We have a certain type of culture. We are being flooded by people that are coming to Europe because they believe they can get a better life here. We need to preserve this kind of values, And we need to understand that in order to preserve this kind of value in the future, we need to have a digital infrastructure that is a fiber-based, that is dense connectivity using radio wherever that is feasible. And this is a task for politicians to understand and to move forward in this kind of thing. We can discuss what is the best way of doing it, implementing this kind of thing, whether it's private, it's joint, private, public, or whatever, but it has to be done. And probably the way of doing it is starting from some areas and starting to see if you can somewhat start up a process where people are seeing the benefit of it and then they're starting to ask for it. In Trentino, it was mentioned, I think, before, they are trying to do that because that's an ideal situation where you have very few people, 450,000, so it's the cost for investing there is not that big. You can create a pervasive environment because if you're doing this kind of investment in Milan and you're serving 450,000 people, you're leaving out 2 million people. And then you cannot talk about the information society because most of them are not hooked up. But there you can work it out and you can see what it means for people living up in the mountains, for people living down in the valley. What does it mean to have an information society? And then from there you can grow. This is an example. There may be many ways to get there, but politicians have to understand that we need to get there.
This is a very crucial aspect. Let me say that just this morning in Paris is in course a meeting, a preparatory meeting for the G20 Assembly that will be held next month in Cannes. And I want to remind you that last May, in occasion of the G8, Sarkozy put the internet in the hotspot of the public opinion. And let me add another consideration, that if we are looking at the G and some other number assembly, until now we registered the assembly of G8 or G5 or G10 with the distinguished indication of singular European nation, Germany, UK. In the next future, Europe will be calculated as a whole. And this could make the difference in the changing of the structural approach. But the point is that the politicians has put in the hotspot internet in the last G8 says that politicians are understanding the importance of internet. So let me ask to Panos Exarchos from OTE, which is the situation in Greece? How political system look at the development of internet, and which are the problems about this, and which is your point of view on the topics?
Most of internet connections are in the region of Athens and less in the other regions. We believe that we have to train people, and mostly for other regions, that can use internet. And not for the known applications such as social media or something else. I would say an example. We have satellite communications, and we have a satellite LASAT, which can support teleeducation services. But less students in islands can use this. So now we have some projects to develop in all the rural regions and especially in islands, so we can offer tele-education and e-health services. I think that the government believes that we have to develop ICT technologies. Greece is a poor country, and believe that the advantage of it is the ICT technology and the broadband internet. We have bigger and bigger penetration from year to year to internet, but I think that we have to try more and persuade the people about the internet and the applications of it.
Also, coming back to one point you touched before, I tried to train my mother to use the internet. Well, she's not an expert now, but she uses it. But we do not have to forget that next generation, I mean, beyond my mother, the generation will come, they now use internet. And they will need, I mean, they don't want it, they need it. As we now need to have our mobile phone switched on. All of you, I suppose, remember when in the beginning of the 90s, we thought, well, mobile phone is only a status symbol. Now it is not. We need it. So actually I think that maybe now there is no the demand, I agree, but in 20 years there will be a very large and strong demand. And what we saw when we roll out our service in Italy is that at the beginning, of course, we saw a exponential growth in rural areas, something we were not prepared, I must admit. In very little villages that I didn't know before, in some little villages at the end of the Po River or in the mountains of Lazio, we had exponential growth of capacity, and not in terms of throughput. I don't want to point to just some users making some big torrent download. No, I'm just thinking about Erlang. I saw 30, 40, 50 Erlang that, if you know what are the values, is a lot of people around just one site, and all day downloading. They were hungry. So actually I think that already now we can see that maybe they don't know they need it, but after we will give them, they will like it.
Salvatore Lombardo, Neelie Kroes charged each country with some people responsible for the objective digital agenda objective, and Infratel belonged to one of the two structures charged by Neelie Kroes, the Ministry for Economical Development and the Ministry for Innovation in Public Administration. Which is the mechanism through you will reply to European Union about your realization, what you built and what you failed in the case, and so on. In which way your judgment is expressed properly?
Generally, in our development plan, we move investment in an area in which the connections are not able. So we are talking about an area in which the measure of the city hall write to the Minister of Development or all the operator in order to have the connection that have a negative answer at this connection because are in the market value. So these areas in Italy now are 3,000 more or less, but are very different situation because we have cities in which the connection is available at 10% and the cities in which the connection is available at 90%. So we have the situation in Italy in which part of the city is in digital divide. So there is the digital divide in digital divide. So for this reason, it's very complex, the connection for the total people who live in these areas. Anyway, we move with the other Minister of Public Administration in order to solve the problem, to add the connection, to increase the public services in broadband, such as PEC, for example. In Italy, PEC is totally not used at the moment. The public administration use only on the 40%. So we try to connect our connection between the investment infrastructure and the demand of the public administration. Another plan that the minister are developing now is the project NGIN, that is one of the targets of digital agenda. Maybe the most complex target. By 2020, all the connection, the 50% of the European citizens will be connected in 100 megabit. This is a great revolution because we have to change our access network by the copper to the fiber optic links. And in this moment, it's a very high problem of market failure because the demands of this service are not able now. It's very short demands of these services, and the operators are not able to invest in this part of area. For this reason, the minister create a Tavola rotonda, a board of all the operators, in order to coordinate the development a new NGN network in Italy. It's a very complex table in which maybe in the next month we could have some answer our question, who invest in this part of the network, how we invest in this part of the network, and maybe which part of the competition we cannot have in order to solve the problem of the connection.
Sometimes we speak about internet, all of us, putting internet between egg and chicken, always. And we are still with the same syndrome. The point is that internet is as the air we breathe. And we know this when there is some crash of internet for a couple of hours. All the world stops. That's the point. So, probably sometimes we are forced in discussing about internet looking to the past. What is your opinion, Professor Busacca?
We are now forced to speak in English, and we look to a period when we were speaking in Latin. The revolution of the internet is something we should follow because it let us to grow rapidly. This is my point. And it's not just that, it's also a question, a problem of welfare, as you were saying before. It's a problem of education, cultural differences, and health. We should rapidly grow in the direction of a fair system, and there is nothing as fair as internet, because it's neutral. All people have internet, they have the same services, they can collect the same information, they can get the same culture. Then I agree with you, Banerjee, when you say it's a welfare problem. It's a problem of health and cultural differences. Internet is something we should go on, and a high bit rate is necessary to have an even fair system for all the globe. This we call globalization, in fact.
Thank you, Professor Busacca. Fulvio Margherita, did internet overpass the egg and the chicken paradigm?
Well, I can't speak about paradigms. I'm a technician, so I wanted someone else answer for these paradigms. But I would say that for what I see now, it is in the middle. I mean, I see that I see the demand for internet. So actually, as you told, I see that once for a simple fault, we switch on one side, we are having a lot of people calling us, say, I need to send a mail. Please switch it on. But there is a phone, switch it on. Actually, I think that we are far in the way that people are acquainted and need.
Thank you. Salvatore Lombardo, is internet like the air we breathe?
Is internet like?
The air we breathe. Are we over the egg and chicken
yes,
paradox?
I think so, because you have to imagine now with the technology, maybe the end user's interface is very simple now. So many people that don't have useful to use the mouse use only the finger to connect directly. So I think that in the next futures, with the new generation, also in Italy, we could increase the 50% of connection internet maybe in 70–80%.
Thank you, Salvatore. Panos Exarchos, your opinion about this? Last opinion.
Yes, I don't know if internet nowadays is like the air, but I believe that is such as electrical current of last century. I think so.
Thank you, Panos. Millie, let me change the question. I want to ask you if Europe will be able to afford the challenge.
Personally, I wish I could say without a doubt yes, but I have a fear that our institutions may not be able to deliver that infrastructure, the philosophical and the political infrastructure that is needed to make this happen. We don't have a dirigist environment in Europe, and we talked about competition. There are hundreds of companies. There's been very little consolidation. How will this happen? I am worried that we may not be.
Thank you, Millie. Roberto, the closure opinion about this roundtable is how will be important the contribution of enterprises and how the situation will be conditioned by politics. Which is your opinion about this?
I personally think that politics have a big responsibility, and in this sense I share some perplexity that was voiced before. I think that enterprises, in spite of politics, they will fight for their survival. The world is global. Independently of whatever decision we may be taking today or tomorrow, the world will go ahead, and enterprises will be reacting to what's happening globally. So I'm confident in a way that Europe will be in line with the rest of the world, because there's no other possibility. I'm not sure whether Europe will be able to lead as it has led in the last 400 years. But I think this is the cycle of history, so it makes sense to have other countries leading, taking the lead. And being a good follower is not that bad, particularly if you bring along some value that we do have. And I think that other people all around the world, by coming to our places, are saying, yes, we would love to have the same value. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. Thank you for your very precious contributions. And I want to thank you for your patience.
A very quick comment about two magic words I've heard during the panel, and these two words are culture and value. I've heard of suggestions to increase internet demands by forcing people to use it, and I think this can be a way to recover efficiency.
Let me make a proposition to you.
Please.
Transform your question in a remark of 1.5 minutes, and you close the round table.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll try. Anyway, let me tell you that I want just to stress the importance of two words that I heard during the session, culture and value. We tend to forget that it's really important that we foster a change of mindset if we want to really leverage on digital internet to, let's say, support the return to a positive growth in terms of economics, in terms of new social behaviors, sustainable economies, and so on. But another important point I'd like to stress, maybe closing this interesting session, is that, you know, it's not just a matter of availability of an infrastructure, even the digital infrastructure. I think it's much more important the use we are going to do of it. So this is something that our politicians tend to forget, being very focused on just, you know, sometimes contributing to make available these infrastructures. But, you know, it's like any other tools we have had in the past. The important point is the use we are going to do of it.
Thank you, Mauro.